Good morning. This is Terry from the Frugal Connection. Welcome to my kitchen today. I am going to try a brand new experiment. I have never made a pie crust that does not include shortening or butter. So because I'm eating differently, I kind of want to walk you along with me as I experiment with this recipe. I want to try my hand at a pie crust using just flour, almond meal, some sort of plant-based milk, and a few other ingredients, and see how it turns out. Now, it might be a total flop. That's just part of experimenting in the kitchen. We'll see how it goes, and I'm going to get my ingredients out and walk you along with me as I do this recipe. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm all set to make the pie crust. I do not have enough apples to make an entire apple pie. So I'm going to instead make some little hand pies, and we shall see how this turns out. It may or may not work, but what I have here is I have some gluten-free flour. Now normally I would probably try my hand at oat flour to do this, but because it's the first time making it for me without using any of the traditional things like oil or shortening or butter, I don't necessarily want to change everything. So I'm going to just start by making this because I had some of this left over, and it's very similar. It's a gluten-free all-purpose flour blend. So it has things like rice flour, potato starch, whatever. I could have used regular all-purpose flour, but I am trying to avoid some of those things. So I said this is the closest to that consistency that I can think of. So I'm going to use this. Then I'm also going to use some almond flour because you do need something in there that's going to give you a little bit of that fat. And so almond flour is a good choice for that. And then I have salt, I have baking powder, and I have almond milk. And so it's a total experiment. We'll see how it goes. Pies are not my strong suit anyway. I think you have to do a lot of pies all of the time to consistently have a pie crust that turns out perfect every time. My sister makes the best pies in the world. They looked beautiful and they tasted good too. They do taste good. I just don't eat sugar anymore. So, but she makes pies constantly. Her and my brother-in-law own a retreat center, and so she cooks as part of these groups that come in, and her baked goods are the best. Okay, so let's get started. So what I'm going to start with here is a cup and a half of my gluten-free all-purpose flour, or you could use oat flour. You could use all-purpose flour if you have no problem with that kind of thing. So I have a cup. Looks like I have just enough. I had a feeling that was going to work well. Okay, and now to that, I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of almond flour. Now, kind of the nice thing about this, because I know with regular pie crust, because it has fat in it, you don't want to overwork it. But because this doesn't have any of that, I don't really have to worry about that so much, which is a good thing because this is a total experiment for me. All right, and now I'm going to add a teaspoon of baking powder to this. I don't know what's wrong with my baking powder. It's lumpy. Okay, that. And I'm going to add about 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And now I'm going to grab out a fork, give it a good mix. I love experimenting in the kitchen, so to me this is not a big deal. I find it enjoyable, and I'm always on the hunt for a new way to do something so that I can get some of my favorites, especially with the holidays coming up, but yet eat in a way that doesn't spiral my weight back up. And is healthier too. Okay, so to this, I'm going to add about 3 tablespoons of almond milk at a time, because I want it to get to the right consistency. And so as you start to stir it, you'll see the lump start up as the flour starts to congeal together. I'm going to add some more. I have a feeling I'm going to end up using this whole thing, but you can always add more. You can't take any out once you add too much. And some of the reasons I wanted to do this is one of my husband's favorite things of all times is pie. And it's his favorite dessert. That's what I make him every year for his birthday. And I thought it would be kind of cool to figure out a way to do some pie crust so that if I make an entire pie, there's not a pie loaded with sugar, loaded with fats and all the things that I don't normally eat tempting me. So this way I can participate too. All right, I'm just going to add the whole thing. So that was a half a cup of almond milk. Now, I'm not sure if it's going to need any more or not. What you kind of want to do is see if it'll hold together. So sometimes with pie crust, you just got to get your hands in there. My hands are clean, and just kind of meld it together. And in this case, I think it needs a little more because it's getting there, but it's not quite there. And it could be because I didn't really measure the gluten-free flour well, that it just, let me wash my hand. Okay, what I'm going to do now is add another tablespoon of this to there. It has a great smell to it. I think the almond meal or the almond flour just gives it such a nice aroma. And again, I got to add some more. I'm going to add 2 more tablespoons. My goodness, it's slipping right out of my hands. Okay. I should learn to experiment with these things before I tried to film them, because I have a feeling when I try to turn this out, it might just make a giant size mess, but maybe it will not. It might pleasantly surprise me. And I think that's also the point of learning along with you. So I'm not, not everything is perfect in the kitchen, as you, I'm sure, are well aware. Oh my, this is nice. I was just really afraid that as I looked at this recipe, that it would just be, I don't know, a crumbly mess and it really wouldn't gel together, because I'm like, how's it going to gel together without the fat to hold it together? But look at this. Amazing. I am pleasantly surprised. I have my dough ball right here, and I am going to cover this up. And I'm going to set it to the side so that I can then make my my filling for the hand pies. Now, you do not have to refrigerate this like you would if it had fat in it. When you're using shortening or butter or oil, you want the dough extremely cold so that you get that flakiness when you bake it. But because this is different, the constitution of it is different because it doesn't have any fat in it. I don't need to worry about that. So it's a little less fussy than regular pie crust. So let me get this mess cleaned up. I'll meet you back here to do the filling. Okay, friends, we're back. Now I'm not going to dirty another bowl. I'm just going to use the same bowl that I used for the crust. All right, so I have 4 apples. I'm going to cut these up, core them, slice them. I'm going to add I think I'm going to use maple syrup, and I have cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves. I'm making it up as I go, so we'll see how it goes. Someone recently commented that they enjoyed my recipes and they were going to try it, but they don't totally eat the way I eat with plant-based whole foods. And I said, that's fine, because my goal here is not to convert everybody to my way of eating. I mean, I know there are some people that are like that, but I particularly think it's up to individuals to make those decisions for themselves. This is what worked for me. My encouragement always is that any improvement on your health is a step forward, right? So if you're making small changes and you're getting rid of some of the things that are bad to eat and you're implementing more fruits and vegetables and whole grains into your diet, I think that's great. Go for it. Everybody's different. What works for me may not work for you. And so my desire here is just to show you how to cook this way and bake things that you traditionally would eat, but do them in a way that's a little more healthy and with a little less guilt as well. All right, I do need to get another bowl after all because I need to get rid of my scraps. Okay. I have a fancy little apple core where you push it down on top of the apple and it divides it into 8 little tiny pieces, and they're perfectly formed. But then you still got to peel them, and I'm old school. I just find that just take a knife and I slice as thin as I can go, so I'm not wasting any of the apple itself, just to get the skin off. It works for me. I've really tried some of the newfangled things that people rave about, and some of them I actually like, but then there are other things that I'm like, I don't know. I just think my old method works, and it's one less gadget I have in my kitchen taking up space. All right, so I'm going to get these peeled up and cored and chopped. Okay, I have all my apples peeled and cored and de-seeded, and now I'm just going to give them a chop into small bits and get them in this bowl. Because they're hand pies, I want to make the apples fairly small, the apple pieces small, so they fit in there. I have my oven preheating to 400 degrees. And I'm also going to figure out what I can brush on the top just to give them a little bit of a sheen on top. And I think what I might do is take some almond milk and just brush that on top and see what that looks like. Again, this is a total made up, make it up as I go recipe and trying to figure it all out. And since I've never made it before, it's an experiment. Now I have 4 apples here, so I think what I'm going to add to this, I'm going to start with like 1/3 cup of maple syrup and see how that tastes once I got that in there. I don't want it super sweet. I want the apples to shine through. I also, I tend to use date syrup more than anything else because even maple syrup, it is a processed sugar. I mean, it's more natural than the granulated white sugar that we often eat, and that's in almost everything we eat nowadays. But even maple syrup, I gotta watch because I just have a tendency, once I get that sweet thing going, it's very hard for me to shut it off. So I don't want that to happen. All right, so let me get this out of the way. I have a baking sheet here that I covered with a piece of parchment paper. And here is my measuring spoons again. To this, I'm going to add about 1/4 tablespoon. Well, I'm at the bottom. I need to get more. I could take the lid off. That would make more sense, wouldn't it? Okay, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I am going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of cloves so we get all those yummy fall flavors in there. And I don't know about you, but I got 1,000 different size spice jars, and I just kind of use what works depending what I have. So there we go. All right. So let me give this a good mix. Oh, smells so good. My oven is done preheating, so all right. What I'm going to do now is add in 1/3 cup of maple syrup. These things are made for right-handed people, and it's hard to pour this way. Okay. Now I think I'm also going to add a little bit of almond flour to this, just because I don't want it to turn into goo inside. Like, I want to firm it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is add about 1.5 tablespoons of almond flour right into the apple mixture, so that, let me make sure that the sweetness is good. Add a tiny bit more. I don't think I had quite the amount I wanted in there because I was doing it backwards. All right, so there's that. And I'm going to also sprinkle in 2 more tablespoons of almond meal. Okay, let me clean up a bit and I'll be right back. Okay, here's where it may get a little messy, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this out, and hopefully it feels good. I think it was good to let it rest for a little bit. I think what I'm going to do is divide this into 2. Just so I'm not working with so much at once. All right, I'll wrap that back up. All right, so I just have 2 pieces of wax paper. You can use parchment paper. You could roll it out on a floured surface, but I just don't want, I don't want it to be super dry, so I'm trying it this way. I just want to make a comment about this rolling pin. I've had this since I've been married. I've been married 36 years. It is a marble rolling pin. It had wooden handles, which long ago broke. And I just use it all the time. And I've tried other rolling pins, and I think because this is so weighted that I just love it, and I cannot get used to anything else. So I know they make all these like really fancy rolling pins where you can measure out exactly the thinness of the crust you're rolling, but I have been baking for so many years. I would say at this point in my life, I'm 62. I've been baking like 50 years. So there is just a lot of what I do is by feel, and I don't know that I could get used to some newer things. All right, so what I'm going to do...
It was here that I discovered that the pie crust just would not...
I guess I was talking and not thinking. I should have rolled this more into a rectangle, but it's okay.
Over onto the pie filling, the dough kept breaking and cracking. So I ended up making a whole other batch
so I can get this side off too.
Crust and turned it into apple pie. I just didn't have enough apples to make the pie nice and high and full like I normally would, so it's a little on the flat side. But it worked with this particular type of dough. Trying to form it into fancy shapes was not working for me.
All right.
Friends, it was here that my microphone decided that it wanted to die. But I did want to mention that this pie was very delicious. The flavor of the filling was wonderful. It obviously could have used a lot, like double the amount of apples, because I set out to make hand pies and not an entire apple pie. But it was still very tasty. The crust is different. I will admit that it's not like a flaky taste like a traditional fat or a crust with fat in it would be. So it was a little bit more on the chewy side. But for me, it would work because it will allow me to have some of my favorites that I've always enjoyed with the flavors that are there. The texture is just a bit different. If you do not have a problem eating oils or fats or things like that, you can use oil in your crust. And that's up to you totally. But I think for those who are trying to get rid of some of the fats and the oils in their diet, that this is a good alternative. I'll type up this recipe. I will post it on my blog. It's on my website called thefrugalconnection.com. And if you go on the website and click on the blog, you'll find the recipe there. I will also put the recipe for the pie filling there as well. You can also find the link down below in the description box. I'm going to also put a link down below to my Facebook page. Again, the website, my new book, Simple and Nutritious 52 Plant-Based Whole Food Recipes, that can be found on Amazon. And I hope you'll give this a try. And again, don't be afraid to experiment in the kitchen. It's so fun to do, and you never know what recipe you'll come up with that is just a winner. And then there'll be some flops, but there'll be probably more winners. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends. My goal in the channel is to teach people how to cook using plant-based whole foods, no sugar, no oil, to do it in a way that doesn't break the bank and yet is delicious and nutritious and simple. So I hope you're having a good day wherever you are, and I will see you in the next video.